On February 28, 2026, a missile struck the exact spot where Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was standing. Hitting a target of this profile at that exact coordinate required a full decade of obsessive planning. For years leading up to 2018, intelligence agencies faced a strategic deadlock. If Israel assassinated a top scientist, Iran simply appointed a new one. If they bombed a nuclear site, the leadership shifted the program to a different location. The nuclear program would slow down, but it would always rebuild. The strategy shifted after a brazen Mossad heist in Tehran. Operatives stole half a ton of documents out of a secret warehouse. Analyzing these files revealed an underground nuclear infrastructure far faster and deeper than previously recorded. It became clear that striking discrete facilities would never permanently halt the program. The true center of gravity was the leadership itself, heavily guarded inside Tehran at the Beit-e-Robbery, the supreme leader's headquarters within the Pasteur Street compound. To stop the nuclear engine, they had to target the driver. The traditional playbook of bombing centrifuges was scrapped. Planning began for a targeted decapitation strike against the core leadership. The Pasteur Street compound is a 30-acre, 50-building complex locked down by 3 distinct layers of elite security forces. To prevent external intercepts, the entire internal communications grid ran on closed-loop fiber optic cables. Data traveled as pulses of light instead of radio frequencies, which neutralized standard satellite eavesdropping. Beneath the surface sat the primary safe zone. This bunker was buried so deep underground that a specialized access elevator took 5 full minutes just to reach the bottom. If that bunker was compromised, a subterranean tunnel network spiderwebbed across a 5-kilometer radius. 8 separate escape exits surfaced directly underneath civilian shields, like schools, mosques, and hospitals. You couldn't walk a spy through the front door, and a standard bombing run would barely scratch the paint on the bunker. Penetrating this fortress required an approach to multi-domain infiltration that had no precedent. Tehran had installed thousands of Chinese-manufactured CCTV cameras for public surveillance. Intelligence agencies identified a remote code execution bug in the firmware that allowed them to secretly hijack the visual feeds surrounding the compound. From above, US KH-11 satellites bypassed signal jamming by relying on pure optics. Orbiting hundreds of miles high, they calculated building heights and exact equipment profiles simply by measuring the length of the shadows cast on the roof. Meanwhile, Orion satellites caught errant radio waves, a guard using a walkie-talkie, or a commander making a brief satellite call. This massive stream of raw signal data was instantly funneled to Pine Gap, a highly secure processing facility in the Australian desert. Digital surveillance only went so far, so operatives closed the gap by targeting the compound's waste. By intercepting and analyzing the literal garbage thrown out by the inner circle, they mapped supply chains and dietary habits. Then came the personal electronics. Pegasus spyware was deployed to compromise the personal cell phones of low-level staff, the cooks, the drivers, the maintenance crew. Tracking them provided a highly accurate proxy view of where the leadership was moving. The result was a staggering flood of raw, chaotic intelligence. Satellite images, intercepted radio chatter, garbage manifests, and compromised cell phone data poured in by the terabyte. No human team could manually process this volume of information. To make sense of the noise, this ocean of data was fed into the Pentagon's Project Maven, an artificial intelligence system designed to digest millions of gigabytes of raw intelligence. The AI analyzed guard shift changes, the specific cars assigned to specific leaders, and even walking postures. It synthesized these tiny details into a predictive pattern of life for the supreme leader, achieving a 98.7% accuracy rate. On February 28, 2026, the algorithm and human assets confirmed an anomaly. The leadership was holding a massive top-level meeting, and crucially, they were holding it above ground, outside the safety of the bunker. As F-35 fighter jets approached Iranian airspace, the first phase of the strike triggered. Dormant malware, secretly embedded years earlier in the supply chain of Iran's S-300 air defense networks, suddenly activated. The targeting computers glitched, and radar screens went entirely blank. With the primary defenses blinded, U.S. Growler aircraft flooded Beaver space with localized electromagnetic jamming. Simultaneously, sleeper drones that had been smuggled into the country in pieces woke up and physically destroyed the paralyzed surface-to-air batteries. The path was completely clear. Exactly at 9:40 a.m., 30 Blue Sparrow missiles descended from the edge of the atmosphere at hypersonic speed, vaporizing the Byte A robbery meeting room with pinpoint precision. Every physical barrier the compound had built was rendered useless. A decade of invisible cyber warfare and algorithmic prediction cleared a flawless path for the kinetic strike. 12 minutes after the strike, millions of Iranians received a notification from Saba, a popular religious app used for tracking prayer times. It read, "Help has arrived." Moments later, a second message appeared on those same screens, calling for the Iranian army to surrender. Inside the compound, the physical reality was catastrophic. In a single, coordinated strike, the top echelon of the Iranian leadership structure had been completely eradicated. Standard protocol dictated that Khamenei remain in the deep bunker during periods of heightened tension. Yet on February 28th, the entire core leadership assembled in an exposed, above-ground room. Intelligence experts largely agree that satellite imaging and AI predictions cannot orchestrate a vulnerability of that magnitude. Setting up the leadership to be in that specific room at that specific time required a high-level human mole operating deep within the inner circle. Impregnable concrete bunkers do not guarantee security. When every frequency is tracked and every habit is mapped, a nation's ultimate vulnerability lies in forgotten software updates, a predictable morning routine, and the garbage thrown out the back door.